Former President Trump talking his way into the World Series. He went Saturday claiming he was invited by Major League Baseball. Reporting quickly contradicted that. And while he was there, he performed the controversial tomahawk chop, a gesture with stereotypical noises that critics have said mocks Native Americans. This comes after he demanded earlier this year that his followers boycott baseball. Joining us now is CNN political analyst Maggie Haberman, Washington correspondent for the New York Times. Let me just go through the timeline here of how he ended up at the baseball game. He put out a statement that said, quote, "Looking forward to being at the World Series in Atlanta tonight. Thank you to the Commissioner of Baseball, Rob Manfred, and Randy Levine of the great New York Yankees for the invite," he said. Well, then the Braves CEO put out a statement, or was forced to put out a statement that said, quote, "He called Major League Baseball and wanted to come to the game. We were very surprised. Of course we said yes."
Right. And I think there had actually been reporting even before that Trump statement from the Braves CEO saying that he had sought this invitation. And you know, what I'm struck by is not that Trump said he got invited when he asked for the invitation. What I am struck by is that, once again, his efforts to get attention work, right? He basically had been shut. There was this effort he was telling people to boycott baseball. Other people were telling corporations to boycott him earlier this year. Now here we are several months later, 9 months after January 6th, 10 months after January 6th. Trump is asking to be let back into this major event. He gets a yes. He frames it however he wants. People are going to remember his statement, and he gets attention. And so, yes, it isn't true. What he said is not true, just based on what the CEO of the Braves had said before. And yet this is exactly the playbook that Donald Trump has followed every single time that he gets pushed to the side in public life, is he finds a way to inch back in, and you saw the result on Saturday.
And he got the picture of doing the tomahawk chop.
Got what he wanted. I mean, he got exactly. I'm not saying. You should not hear that as me saying the ends justify the means, because I'm not. I'm saying, I mean, he is absolutely saying something that isn't true, but he doesn't care, whereas, you know, other people do care. And he is, at the end of the day, been deprived of the most attention that he had ever had in his life once he left the presidency, and he is slowly finding ways to get it back again.
Why does he want the attention?
Because this is something he has wanted for 40 years, and it is not simply about running for president, although certainly that is part of it right now, I suspect.
Positioning for that. The reason I asked that, why does he want the attention, is because Tim Scott, senator from South Carolina, who some people see as a possible presidential candidate, was asked directly about it over the weekend and more or less said, if Trump's running, I'm going to support him.
Yeah, he said something, it was a little lighter than that, but it is true that it was, you know, would you be behind him? And he said, of course, or something like that. And you're right that Tim Scott is not only seen as a prospective candidate, but he is seen as an attractive candidate to a lot of Republicans who liked Trump's policies, did not like Trump's behavior. I have heard Tim Scott's name over and over again. It is interesting that you are seeing him say that publicly, because at the moment, what I'm hearing from a bunch of other Republicans privately, again, they're not saying this publicly, and so that's always the asterisk here, but they are saying privately, you know, that Trump's not going to be a factor in their decision, right? So among the people who I have heard is telling people that is Mike Pompeo. He has told a number of people that he told Trump directly he's going to run even if Trump runs. Did he actually tell Trump that? How did Trump react? Did Trump react well or non-confrontationally or get annoyed? We're never going to know. It's a conversation between the two of them. But he is one of the people saying that. There are other Republicans who are sort of signaling Mike Pence as one of them. He will have a hard time, I think, running if Trump does, as would Mike Pompeo for the same reason. But I think that you're seeing more often than not Republicans trying to signal they're going to do what they want. That said, Trump is obviously the 800-pound gorilla in this race.
Yeah, two things. One, once he gets in, it could be a different story.
That's right.
Two, how long will he wait before he lets them know? Will someone like Mike Pompeo have to get in just to get in?
Right. Well, I mean, everybody else has a different consideration than Trump, right? Trump could conceivably wait until 2024 to get into the race. It'd be bad for his party if he did that, but it would be on his own timeline.
I want to ask you about John Eastman, who is the lawyer who wrote the memo, the blueprint for how to overturn the election, for how Mike Pence could overturn the election on January 6th. The Washington Post reported the presence of an email that Eastman wrote to Pence's people saying, this insurrection is your fault because you didn't step in the way. There was another interesting data point over the weekend, which is that Andrew Kaczynski and the K-File team put out an interview that Eastman did with Steve Bannon on his podcast on January 2nd that gives us a window into Eastman's state of mind. Let's listen to that.
Is there a way, an alternative way that you see the power through this using either the Electoral Control Act or some decision that made that the Vice President of the United States grows a spine and understands his constitutional duty as you interpret it, Mr. Eastman?
those slates of electors are invalid. And I think if the vice president, as presiding over the joint session, would at least agree that because those ongoing contests have not been resolved, we can't count those electors.
Why is that significant?
It's significant because there has been, well, it's significant for a couple of reasons. Number one, it illuminates the timeline. Anything that illuminates the timeline leading to January 6th, I think, is important, number one. Number two, it's important because John Eastman, in a number of statements, particularly with the National Review, I'd say was most prominent there in recent days, has been trying to say that essentially what I wrote on paper, I didn't really believe in any of that. I didn't think this was a practical way to do it. One of the things that happened in the lead up to January 6th was that Eastman was telling Pence's people, and he was telling the president, and he was telling people around the president, Pence can do this. Pence can overthrow these results. Pence can reject these results. Then when it became clear that that was not going to happen and that other, legal scholars didn't think this was realistic, suddenly that's when Eastman and others started switching to send it back to the states. They've been trying to suggest the first thing wasn't happening. That audio is a reminder it absolutely was.
It shows you what Eastman really felt despite what he's saying now after the fact. Very interesting. All right, Maggie Haberman, great to see you, as always. So it is election eve. Hear what Democrats and Republicans are doing on their final day in two critical races.